Y'all, she's finally here. I am ready to showcase you guys my take on Magnolia with the new Masked Magnolia support and showcase to you guys what my baby is doing in the current meta. I will say that my take on Magnolia is definitely a different one, but it's one that I'm actually pretty confident in because the versatility of this deck, as usual with any Stoicheia deck, is very good. You have a lot of pieces that can help you fetch out other pieces, you're recycling from your graveyard, you're getting 5 to 6 attacks consistently in this deck, you have a control aspect. Magnolia is one of those decks now that does a little bit of everything, and I love it because of how consistent its prior support was, which this deck does let you take advantage of because you're still a Magnolia Vanguard. With that being said, let's finally get into this deck profile. Alright, so to get things popping, I am starting off with the Zorga Ride line for Masked Magnolia. Now, my Magnolia deck is taking a different approach. I am using some order cards to help prove the consistency of this deck because Magnolia Masque, unlike prior Magnolia decks, doesn't really pop off until you actually get there. And because the Grade 3 Magnolia itself, unfortunately, isn't as strong as it could be like its newer competition, I do think it's important to have the orders kind of like help you out in the early game up until you get to that level. Okay, so starting off with the main deck, I have one copy of Sylvan Beast King Magnolia. I will say this now, you will never, ever, 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 ever Persona ride into this. As much as I love Magnolia, unfortunately, it's just too slow and it's been outclassed by other decks. You are only using this card because you want to trigger the second ability of your Magnolia Masque. And I actually think it's a very powerful skill because in some matchups, you do want that control aspect to start knocking away their pieces to increase your chances of winning the game. And finally, the star of the show. Oh my goodness, it's so beautiful. We have 4 copies of Sylvan Beast King of Calamity, Magnolia Masque. Now, Magnolia Masque is going to get a debut on this channel because it's the first time being showcased. Continuous. This card can only be written from a grade 3 card with Magnolia in its card name. Continuous Vanguard Circle. During your turn, all of your rear guards on a rear guard circle with a Dragon Tree marker can attack from the back row and get power plus 10,000. Act Vanguard Circle once per turn. Remove a card with Magnolia and its different card name from this unit from hand, soul, or drop. And this unit gets auto Vanguard Circle. When your rear guard attacks a Vanguard from the back row, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire until end of turn. I will say this now, Magnolia Masque really lives up to its name of being a beast. The additional 10k power to the back row means that in the early game, you're hitting way harder than you did being on the grade 4 Magnolia, and because all of your Magnolia support stuff have power-up skills of their own, on top of the benefit of the Dragon Tree marker giving a permanent 5k to those units during your turn when they're on there, means that your back row units hit for really good match numbers right away. And on Persona Ride turn, it's even better because you get the 10k to the front row, so your numbers are just in a really good spot. Being able to knock out those annoying pieces that they might have or anything of that nature does become important because a lot of decks are a little bit more piece reliant, simply for the fact that with Gandiva running around, they're a little bit more cautious towards what they're dropping onto the board. And with Magnolia Masque having that control aspect, that means that we can get rid of the annoying pieces that they're playing that are bothering us. Moving on to grade 2s, I play 4 copies of Dragon Tree Wretch Depth Welleth. Now, this card is your Mask Searcher. It searches out the Mask of Hydrogam, so naturally we can play Magnolia Masque, but it also plays a more crucial role in this deck considering the fact that we do need the Dragon Tree markers. So being able to drop this card right away and then start setting up those Dragon Tree markers and thinning out your deck from the Mask of Hydrogam. And for the newest grade 2 to join the Magnolia troops, we have 3 copies of Forced Grow Dragon. This card is insane and it deserves a debut. Auto, when this unit is placed on rearguard circle other than during the battle phase, if your Vanguard is Sylvan Beast King of Calamity Magnolia Masque, Counterblast 1, choose a grade 3 or less card from your drop up to the same number of Dragon Tree markers on your rearguard circle and call them to rear guard. Auto Rearguard Circle, when this unit attacks, choose one of your Vanguards with Magnolia in its card name and it gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn. Now, Forced Grow Dragon is crazy because this is the card that makes those Gandiva matchups not painful. You can drop Forced Grow Dragon, and if you've got your Dragon Tree set up, for 1 Counterblast, you can get your entire back row back right away. And that is insane because Gandiva, with the new support that it has, is going to knock out at least about 3 to 4 of your units, depending on what your back row is looking like and the support that they have. Therefore, having this card just automatically give your entire board back right away to fight back against Gandiva and deal with those 6 attacks. Splendid, beautiful, fantastic, awesome support. Bushi didn't miss with this one. For my next grade 2, and this is a personal choice, I am playing 2 copies of Sylvan Beast Alpine. Now, Sylvan Beast Alpine is the resource management piece for Magnolia, and I think that because of all the counterblasting and the soul blasting from the ride line, as well as the ability of your other cards, I do see a place for this card in the deck. I like building my decks when they do have some form of resource management that they can fall back onto. And another key thing to understand about Alpine is the fact that the ability to bind this card is cost, which means that you don't actually have to get rid of this card right away. You can just leave it onto the board, and when you do need that additional counterblast or soul blast, for whatever it is that you might need in the turn prior, you at least have this card to go into. For my next grade 2, I am playing 2 copies of Sylvan Beast Gully Dote. Now, Gully Dote's a funny card because I've seen some people play this in the ride line of the deck. Like, they don't even play the grade 2 dragon, they just play this and then, you know, use the effect of it for later when you have to soul blast out or something. I actually like Gully Dote. It's a solid card. It's basically this deck's version of Inlet Pulse Dragon to give you additional card draw. It also gives 5k again to Magnolia Masque. So if you're ever in a situation where you need to make your Vanguard a magic number, on top of this in Force Grow Dragon, Magnolia Masque will be hitting for about 18 or 23,000, which is a really strong number by itself. Moving on to grade 1s, I am playing 2 copies of Dragon Tree Ret's Bist Octavius. Now, Bist Iavatis is a card I have not showcased, so it gets a debut. Auto, when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, counterblast 1. Choose one of your rearguard circles without any Dragon Tree markers and put a Dragon Tree marker on it. Act rearguard circle. Once per turn, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, counterblast 1 and soul blast 1. Choose a normal order from your drop and put it into your hand. So just like Depth Welleth, this is another card that costs a counterblast 1, soul blast 1, which is why the Alpine actually becomes important. But because I do play some orders in this deck that I do think that serve Magnolia a really good purpose in the later game, and sometimes even in the early game when I have access to this card, means that we always have access to different outs during the game, and as well as the fact that this card is another Dragon Tree marker maker, which means that we have 6 different ways of making Dragon Tree markers in this deck to increase our chance of getting that 3 Dragon Tree marker in the back row. Next up, I play 4 copies of the Stoicheia PG. And then finally, I play 2 copies of Sylvan Beast Serral. Now, out of all the cards I will say in this deck, I feel like Serral is like a mandatory card. Its ratio is up for debate. I'm debating on I know that 2 is a minimum, but I'm debating on going higher or not. Serral is really important because this card lets you filter out your deck for your Magnolia piece that you might need. It also helps you filter out the deck for this to activate the effect of your Vanguard if you want the retire ability. But the main thing on why this card is important is because if you have this in the rearguard circle, in the back row, it gives the Persona Ride benefit to your front and back row anytime it comes out onto the field. By the way, this doesn't have to be on the field, like when you Persona Ride. If you Persona Ride, you can call this card out, and then you'll still get the benefit to the back row. Okay, so it's time for the orders. So for my first order, I'm playing 2 copies of In the Dim Darkness, The Frozen Resentment. Now, this card lets you obviously recur a card back from your drop zone, but another key thing is the fact that it lets you start digging your deck out for pieces you don't need. So just start knocking away those key pieces you want in the drop zone right away to call them back with Force Grow Dragon later. Just start setting up your board once you finally get your Magnolia Masque set up. Next up, we have 2 copies of Mythiarch Habitat. I've discussed my thoughts about this card in the actual Mythiarch deck. Being a free top 7 check is just insane. 7 cards in a deck like this where you're doing a lot of searching. You're actually searching with Depth Welleth, Serral. You have these thinning outs, the mask cards. This being able to just get any key piece that you need in the deck at that time period means that we always have access to a majority of the cards that we play in our deck when we need them. And then finally, for my last order, I am playing 2 copies of Mask of Hydrogram. And for my triggers, I'm still debating on how I feel about this, but when I don't know, I stick to what I know. So I play 8 critical, 3 draw, 1 Stoicheia OT, and then 4 generic heal. Now, Magnolia Masque is interesting because the deck has so much thinning and searching, and the orders help you get the pieces you actually need for the deck. I will say that the trigger lineup is very flexible. You could probably even play Rainbow just like you did in the grade 4 deck, because since you again have access to Persona Ride front and back row, you can reoccur cards from the drop zone, cards call themselves out from the drop zone. You have Force Grow Dragon, which essentially gives you access to your entire drop zone. You can play Rainbow and get 6 attacks and still be extremely scary with this deck. And now, with that being said, with triggers, and I've showcased the deck, my thoughts on Magnolia Masque versus the grade 4. I think that Magnolia Masque is better than the grade 4 for now. I actually do think that the grade 4 is not a horrible card. It's just the fact that The grade 4 is consistent and it doesn't require anything. It doesn't require any setup. This card requires setup, and that's the only thing that makes Magnolia Masque not good. Because if for whatever some strange reason you don't start seeing these to build up your Dragon Tree markers, you're just playing old Magnolia. And we all know how bad that is right now, because compared to everything else that exists for this format, it's too slow. Hence the reason why first turn Magnolia, you never really want to stay on this. Unless my opponent is having a bad end on their side and I see it, I might hold off on it, but very rarely do I ever do that. I think that Magnolia Masque is extremely flexible. I definitely see myself changing this deck within like the next 1 or 2 weeks. And if I don't make any changes, then you guys will be the first to know, because I'll make a deck profile on it. However, this is my take on Magnolia Masque right now. I'm very curious to hear your guys' thoughts on it. I've been enjoying this list. Again, you have so much like versatility, flexibility, the consistency is off the charts. Your triggers, you know, you see them a lot more because you have so much deck thinning thanks to 6 different cards of deck thin. The orders come through, and thanks to Bis Ivis, you get the orders you need when you need them. Mythiarch Tap Habitat is a godsend in this deck. I just didn't max it out because I felt like sometimes this card might be just a little bit more needed considering like how the deck works. But yeah, guys, that concludes my take on Magnolia Masque. Tell me what you guys think about this deck in the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts on it. I can't wait to hear you guys, and keep on card fighting. Enjoy your weekend. Peace.